Hey everybody, today we are going to do a step-by-step follow along in which you're going to help me lay out the UVs to this hammer. So on your module page I've already provided you the hammer here, and so this is kind of a Thor-esque hammer, and what our goal today is to do is I want you to follow along and I want you to lay out the UVs exactly like I do, and you're going to turn in your UV snapshot. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is take a quick look at our wireframe unshaded so you can kind of see the different pieces. And I'm going to go over to my outliner and I want to show you how I've organized this hammer for you. So there's many different groups of the hammer, for instance the handle and the hammerhead itself, and this will allow you to kind of best represent the UVs and best get to the different pieces of the UVs. I've also included a display layer in your channel box, what will turn on and off the UVs. I'm going to go ahead and quickly add that to that. There we go. Your file will already have that ready to go. Alright, so let's get started. And to get started, what we're going to do is first apply a UV test grid to all of your object. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the up key a few times, and what that's going to do is that's going to select my whole hammer group. And once I have the up key selected, I'm going to right click and assign a new material. This new material we're going to use is just going to be another Lambert shader. So we're going to find in the assign new material window the word Lambert and go ahead and proceed to assign that. So once we're on that, we want to find that new Lambert. It's going to be entitled Lambert 2, and you can select any piece at this point, and you'll see Lambert 2 is actually associated with all of them in your attribute editor. So I'm going to rename this Test UV for the shader name, and that's going to be easier for me to find. I'm going to hit the Enter key, and now let's go ahead and add a UV test grid. So I went ahead and provided you this UV test grid here. Our goal with this test grid is to maintain the squares that you see in front of you. We don't want them to be rectangles, we don't want them to be width or vertically or horizontally stretched, and we want all the numbers and letters to relatively read in the same direction. So to apply that to our shader, we're going to go ahead and take that new shader we created called Test UV, find the color attribute, and go to the checkerboard box. And when we do that, we'll get a whole new Create Render Node window, and we'll seek the File tab and hit OK, and then the golden folder, and navigate to where your UV test grid is, double click, load it up, and we are ready to move forward. Now at first glance you don't really see much here, so I'm going to hit 6 on the keyboard, and we will definitely get a good idea at that point some of the stretching, and you can see automatically some of the distortion that comes in hand when we start to work with UVs. And this is why we have to UV map, because if we were to color in this hammer, anything from Photoshop that we put in would be just as distorted or stretched as the squares that you see here. Now not all the parts of this are distorted. You'll notice some faces have nice geometry, and those are great. Some faces, on the other hand, are upside down. So we'll have to be very aware and careful of this as we move forward. Alright, let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the handle, and I want to focus on the hammer head to start. The hammer head is the biggest, most prominent item in the hammer, and I want it to be the largest piece on my UV map. So, and being because it's the largest piece of my object. So I'm going to go to UV and UV editor, and I'm going to do some quick housekeeping. So at first glance, when you do this, and notice I'll put these side by side, it's a bit cumbersome to see everything that's happening. So one of the first things I want you to do is I want you to turn off your display image by clicking this little button here. Then I want you to go over to the right a little bit and click the purple shaders, and these purple shaders will help you essentially get the right layout that you're looking for and be able to kind of move these different shells. And that's what these are right now. They're already separated. I've already gone and automatic mapped them for you. And you can see when I right click and go to shell mode and I click and hit W, I can move different shells. And those different shells obviously are associated with different faces within your material. So that's kind of nice. Now, if you're not looking to have that appearance again, for instance, if we wanted to add maybe these top faces to the top or keep them to the bottom, we could go ahead and planar map these. But right now, this is a good starting point. So let's start with almost a more intermediate technique. Let's stitch these together, because right now the edges don't really line up. You can see the squares, especially right where this face and this face meet. We can see that they don't really line up very nicely. So let's go ahead and first figure out where our hammer is, and make sure everything's rotated in the right direction. It looks like it is. And I'm going to start just by going to edge mode, and when I highlight another edge, the congruent edge is selected. And that's really important because these are essentially the same edge. These share similar faces. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is hold Shift and go to Move and Sew. And I could also go to Move and Sew down here in my polygons subset menu of the UV editor. And I want to go ahead and I want you guys to do the same thing. I want you to kind of follow my lead. And I'm holding Shift to grab all these little faces. Hold Shift, Move and Sew. There we go. And we can go here, Move and Sew, and then we're going to throw one more on here. This one really isn't terribly important if we put it on this side or this side, because you can see they share similar edges here. It's just up to you. All right, now that we have that, we have our main shell, and you can see it's still way too big to fit in there. So if I were to fit it by hand, I would have to scale down. There is a little easier way to do this. We'll get into that in a little bit, but let's see what our results are firsthand of our seam. So let's go ahead and click here. Let's turn on the purple so we can see. We can see that we do have seams. You're always going to end up with seams, and we do have minimal distortion. You can see some of these edges are actually bigger than they should be. One of the steps I like to take is I like to right click and go to UVs and highlight all my UVs, and then I hold Shift and go to Smooth UV tool. This tool gives us this little itty bitty GUI that you can see when I hover over the word unfold with my left mouse button. It actually kind of adjusts some of the UVs for me. So that's a really nice method. You can also grab individual elements, and what I tend to do is kind of run this smooth function as many places as possible. So I grab little sections of the UV, and what this will do in the end is just give me a nice uniform unfolding. Relax doesn't really do what I want it to do, but the word unfold really will. So that unfold function there is a really great function, and we can see now, and we'll turn off the wireframe unshaded here, that we have a pretty close item. Now there are items such as these corners that if I do want to move and sew these, I can do that. Let's see what happens if we try that. Let's see if it's beneficial or it hurts our piece. So I'm going to grab them all at the same time and hit Move and Sew. And I do have distortion, so I want to go to that UV Smooth tool, and I want to unfold a little bit. And you can see it's helpful in some areas, but areas such as up here, it really kind of stretches our UVs in a weird way. So I would be, a little bit hesitant to probably sew those together just because my edges are going to look weird. I think, we're better off in the end, if I undo a few times, keeping it this way personally. But that's all up to you. As long as you get this basic shape, I'm happy with you. So let's go ahead and just do one more unfold there. Perfect. All right, so that UV is saved, and I can always run a polygons UV layout, and what that will do is put it in the biggest order possible. If you don't want to do that, you can obviously scale and move on your own. I kind of enjoy this method right here because I can kind of fill the screen as big as I need to. What I don't want to do is grab everything and scale it up, because then these aren't squares anymore. You want to keep those as square shaped as possible. All right, so step 1 is done. So let's go ahead and let's save as. This may crash on us at some point, and I'm not going to hide anything from you guys. If it crashes on me, I'll for sure let you know. And let's call this UV start. And we're going to hit continue. And let's go ahead and make a display layer with that. And we'll call it the head of the hammer. So we'll just say head. Save. And let's now just activate the other elements of the hammer. Now that we've activated these, we can kind of avoid, we don't need to really mess with this just yet. We'll get back to that. But we can kind of really see what we have going on. So we have a cylinder in the middle, which is our handle, and we have similar shapes, which are duplicates of one another, as like the grasp or the, you can see it in shaded mode here, but the textured maybe leather straps. And then we have the base of the hammer, which is in 2 parts, and then some ornamentation kind of to razz it up a little bit. And then we have this piece here. Now, when I look at this piece in particular, let's start with this piece because it's kind of hanging out on its own. It looks like it's kind of already UV mapped, but let's go ahead anyway and look at our UV editor, and let's move it to the side, and let's get to work. Now, one of the first things I notice personally is I don't need this face. This face right here, let's go ahead and go to shell, and I want you to click on that and hit delete. You do not need that face because that's going to be against the hammer. And to prove my point, if I turn on the hammerhead, you would never know that face isn't there. It's actually interpenetrating the geometry a little bit. So that's okay. Now, I have multiple ways I can lay this out. Let's start with kind of a more advanced technique. This is an interesting technique because you almost have to lay it out distorted before you can get it to be clean. So I want you guys to hold shift in object mode and make sure you're clicking where I am. Right click and go to mapping planar map X. Now what this does is it looks like it UVs it, but it does in the front. But in the back, yeah, it's super stretched. You can see it's not supposed to look like that. But what it does give us the opportunity to do now is to run some other functions. One of the functions we could try is right-click Smooth UV Tool, or we could run the Unfold option. So if I go ahead and hit Unfold at the top, and we look, let's see what it gave us here. It's kind of unfolded everything in a neat way. So that's one way, and I'm going to undo that. So hit Command Z. I can also activate Unfold here. Now if I right click on that little button, I actually get a few different options in which I can kind of set this. So let's go to right here. There we go. So we got that option, and then we have, let me do reset settings. We have other options too. I don't know where those little other options went, but oh well. We will get to them if need be. All right, so I think this is actually going to work well. Let's go to Smooth UV Tool, and let's just try that unfold like we did before. And you can see all that's doing is essentially going to give us the same exact result if we keep right-clicking, or left-clicking, pardon me, and pulling on top of that. That's going to give us the unfold too. And we do have some distortion here in which this tool would have worked a little better. So one of the options, again, that we want to kind of play with is utilizing this unfold tool to a way in which we can best get as minimal distortion as possible. So if I look at this here, you can see we do have minimal distortion, and I can also even go as far as running that UV smooth tool again and kind of unfolding it just to tighten it up a little bit. So, you know, keep playing around with it. You can see sometimes you push it too far. Other times, you know, there's other places we got to fix. And so that's a good option. So that's one of our options when we go to lay this piece out. The other option is to break it up into more manageable chunks. So let me go ahead and go all the way back to the beginning. You can just hit Command Z. It's not going to hurt anything, I promise. I'm hitting Z, and we're going to go all the way back to here. And we can utilize the different pieces depending on the texture. So if this is already laid out, which it looks like it is, I think we can all agree that that looks okay. I can also even just grab faces, highlight them. Just going to highlight these. And I'll do mapping planar map. There we go. And you can see it's backwards, so this is a little trick. If your numbers and letters are backwards, use this flip button. You want everything to be purple. You can see now it's forward. Good. And now we can play with this piece of geometry. So if I highlight all this geometry, what could we do? Well, we could run an automatic map. And you can see it gives us some interesting elements. So that's kind of neat. One of the elements it gives us is this ring on the back, which we don't really need. So that's okay. We can kind of leave it as is. We can also utilize some of these and try to move and sew them this way. And you can see that doesn't really do its job. Even if we did move and sew those and unfold the UVs, we don't really get something that's obviously in perfect distortion. So as much as we keep going with this, what it's going to end up bringing it to, and it's actually kind of interesting on this one if you look really closely, we're actually getting some decent UVs with that. But what it's really wanting us to do is kind of take it back to the original point. So we can do this, move and sew. And we can kind of sew these together as well. So you guys got to really kind of figure out what's best for your model. So sometimes I end up doing more work than I need to. So if I do move and sew here, and I can fix that with the obviously the UV tool here, go to smooth UVs. It just really depends on what looks best for my model. So if I continually unfold this and I get to a point in which, you know, it's looking good, I can do that. So let's go ahead and try this method. So let's go around to all the edges. I hit W to get out of my move and sew tool. And I'm just going to select everything that has a brother or sister edge. Move and sew. It looks pretty rough, I know, but we'll fix it. And, you know, sometimes patience is just the best method. But however you can get to this shape, you know, if you get to it, if you find a faster way, I'm happy you do that. That's fine. Work smarter, not harder sometimes, right? Sometimes, unfortunately, you have to work smart and hard in efforts to better kind of serve your needs for this UVing. And once you get the hang of UVing, you'll kind of understand different tricks and methods to get the shapes that you want. Right-click, Shift, move and sew. And let's go ahead and grab all the UVs, and let's see if we can't... actually, we'll just grab it per edge and do the Smooth UV tool. So we'll do it a few times and see if it will work for us. And this one is obviously having a little fun kind of bulging out. So let's do this. And our goal is that they don't overlap. And obviously our goal is that they're clean and there's minimal distortion. So you can see I have minimal distortion on the edge here. I'm getting some distortion here. So let's grab everything and let's do unfold, and there we go. Now we're getting somewhere. And it's kind of bringing us back to that initial shape that we originally had. So now that we have that, you can see that we have this piece right here. Now, like I said, I don't necessarily think that this piece in the back is that important. So I'm going to kind of just leave it be, because most likely I would make it just a singular color. But what I do like to do is kind of organize my UVs a little bit. So I'm going to just have it kind of gravitate around or rotate or orbit the other UV here. So this piece, in my mind, is done. I don't see any major distortion. I do have some stuff that's quote-unquote upside down, but that's okay. I'll know that. So if I'm really worried, I can just rotate using my little rotate keys until I see everything is right side up. And that piece is done. Now this piece does not need to be this big. So if I grab everything in shell mode, I'm going to scale this down quite substantially. And I'm going to maybe put this little end of the hammer in one of these top right quadrants right here. So there we go. So that piece is done. So let's go ahead and move forward, and you can see where I put it. Let's move forward and work on another piece. And this piece looks cool. We got a couple faces in there. Let's do the UV editor. Let's see what it gives us. Let's try first an automatic mapping. Sometimes this works really well. That looks pretty good. And let's do some move and sews. Let's see if that will get us getting what we want. So it looks like these are the outside rings. So those are pretty important to me. Maybe those are going to be steel or metal. So I'm going to painstakingly grab all of these. Move and sew. Let's see where it puts it. Puts it over there. Okay, that's fine. Remember, we have our other tools and access to all those. Again, patience will pay off. We have the other one here, and then we can go to the very top. And again, I'm just in edge mode, and I'm holding my shift key down. My shift key will allow me to grab these different edges. There we go. That piece is pretty gnarly, so let's grab the whole UV, or actually let's move this out of the way so I can grab everything. That's my back section. Let's grab all my UVs here in UV mode. Shift and do the smooth UV tool and do the unfold function as many times as it really lets us until it gets to a certain point. And that's a pretty good representation of non-distorted geometry. Notice I don't really care, because I'm not going to really wrap these around each other, that there's a seam there. That's okay. Seams are good when you know what they're doing. For the shell, I'm going to grab these and just out of force of habit, I typically run a quick planar map on them. So that's a planar map X, and I'll scale that down. And it looks like it's backwards, so I'll flip it, and then I will rotate it so I know that's the top. Now in this case, this back portion is not really even seen at all, so I'm going to make it super tiny because I'll just paint that a solid color, and that's okay. Okay, so those are done. We're going to find later where to put those, so just kind of leave them out and about where you need to go. So I'll grab the whole shell here and just move it this way. Alrighty, let's do the next piece, which is not that piece, this piece here. Let's try some other tools. Maybe we'll try a cylindrical map. Now if your cylindrical map doesn't work right away, don't fret. When you go ahead and apply a map under the mapping methods here, you do get this GUI, or this little handle, that if you notice, if you play around with it, it actually starts giving you some options. I like to hit this little rotate function down here, and I like to play with it this way a little bit, and sometimes now and then that will actually work, and so I can kind of see where everything's at. I can, you know, rotate around, and you know what, at a certain point it just may not look right. So what we're going to do at this point is just run an automatic map. And we get a relatively clean map. So just to keep it uniform. We will run these. And I'm doing a quicker method here just so I don't bore you, but the idea is the same. I'm grabbing the top and the top only, so I'm deselecting the bottom. And I'm holding shift, moving so. You can see these are actually pretty straightforward. You may need to have different ones of these. In other words, it may get way too long of a UV shell that you can't fit in to get the proper pixels. So just keep doing what I'm doing. And do this again. There we go. Hold my control key down. Deselect those, moving so. You'll start seeing it's going to get pretty long pretty quick here. Take that out, moving so. Take that out. Moving so. And kind of work our way out. Do these at the same time. I'm using the control, not the command key, to deselect those. Oh, those didn't like it. So let's try just one of them. There we go. Those look pretty good. So those look to be two equal distant pieces. And how do I know I did everything right? Well, I use my cheat sheet, which is that UV test grid, and I look and I say, those look kind of square-like. I do have some rectangles in there, and if I see any rectangles, my first option is to do the Smooth UV tool and try to unfold those a little bit. And hopefully, by doing that, I'll be able to kind of adjust those slightly. If you do have a rectangle, don't fret. In something as small as this, and you can see that kind of fixed it. It's rather easy to use. Now these are our shells for the front and back. Those are not very big, as I mentioned in the last project, or the last UV, so those will be small. And these will be relatively small. And that piece is done. Notice I'm not stitching together everything, right? I'm just kind of like, if it's kind of tiny, and I know it's just going to be a flat color, they don't need to be too big. Let's go ahead and get the main handle. This is probably going to be an easy one because this is more of a cylinder. So I can attempt to do my cylindrical mapping. And again, once I get this little interface, I could rotate this, or I could even hit this and scale it. So, you know, the trick with this, guys, and I'm doing this for the first time in front of you just to hopefully you get something from my thought process, but the trick with this in the end is to experiment and to use, for instance, spherical mapping. Let's look at that. And to try to attempt to get the best possible piece of geometry that you can. And we know there's a ton of methods here. We know that we can do a ton of cool things. One of the things I could even do on this is just an automatic map. Actually, there it is. Hit the wrong button. And you can see, in the end, the automatic map actually worked the best. And that's fine. Like, I'm not going to ever deny something not working the best. So let me go ahead and hit File, and we'll do a Save As, and we'll put UV Start, and I'll just do File 1. There we go. I don't want to crash my computer. Let's do these. And this is a pretty dominant part of our project, so we'll keep in mind that. It looks like everything else is sewn together. Let's see if we have a nice proper UV. We sure do. So we're done with that now. So you can see once we get going, and I'm going to move this piece out of the way. My mouse just does not want to cooperate right now. The story of my life sometimes. Helps if I select it. Let's go to green mode. Let's try that. There we go. So move that down here. All right. And let's kind of move our way down. We'll get to these in a second because there's a special method we're going to use for those. For this mode, we know the front faces are probably going to be okay, and the back faces are going to be okay, if we even need those, but we're going to make those kind of somewhat smaller. And let's just scale this, and let's see if we can't get this to look right with scale. So I'm not going to even UV map this one. I'm going to start by attempting to scale and get it to as close to a perfect square as possible. That looks pretty good. So grab the shell, scale the whole shell down, and now I have that piece. So you can see once you get to an end, and now this is a tricky one, but every piece seemingly gets easier. So let's do a quick automatic map and see what it gives us. It gives us some familiar kind of faces. Let's see if this will work. So what I did is I'm double clicking on the edges. Then I'm going to sew those together. And I'm going to attempt, if it lets me, not sure it will, to do a smooth UV on it. So unfold. There we go. Almost perfect UVs. So let me show you that again. So what I did was I approached this, I automatic mapped it, and I kind of want everything to be revolved around this center piece. So what I did there was I clicked on an edge and double clicked it in edge mode. I hit W to get into edge mode. There we go. I hit move and sew, and I know these are attached. You can see how they're lighting up when I hit them. So I double clicked on the border edge, move and sew again, makes something that looks like a TIE fighter in Star Wars, and then I did that. I can even hit the UV layout right here, and that actually gives me a pretty decently nice result. So let me kind of fix that. That UV layout did the thing, so now I'm going to just kind of unfold a few of these just to, because this piece looked a little off. There we go. Perfect. So that piece is done. And move that to the side. We only have one more piece left, and that's this kind of strange looking piece. So let's go ahead and do an automatic and see what it gives us. Probably gonna give us some weird shapes. Oh, got to be in object mode, don't we? Green mode. Automatic map. Okay, now this is going to be a tricky one. So we're going to attempt, and I think the easiest way here is to try to attempt to just kind of make a long line that we can kind of color in. So move and sew. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that little zigzaggy line, that should be pretty good. And we've done that with the other pieces, but again, automatic mapping will get you a starting point, and then you can kind of justify what you want to do. So I'm going here. These kind of look like little, like Fritos or something. Same technique. And don't be like me, zoom in. It's easier. A good UV layout will take you a good amount of time. It's, you know, it's equivalent to you modeling. So just remember that. Like, so if you think, oh, I'm taking too long to UV, it's better that you take a little longer and allot enough time for it than if you just kind of say, hey, well, I'm done. I'm gonna hit automatic map and call it a day. That's not gonna work out for you in the end. That's gonna actually cost you more time. There we go. Just for giggles, I'm gonna go to UVs I'm going to try to run a unfold. You can see it did just a little bit of change. I could also run my smooth UV tool and hit unfold that way. That's actually pretty nice. I'm going to do the same thing with this piece. So I hit the little unfold button, grab the UVs, and smooth. Kind of smooth those out a little bit, and there you go. Now, here's a little trick. You have a couple options now. If you get these to where you like them, and these little shells are going to be so small, I don't even need to see them. They're going to just be a solid color. But when you get it to a point where you like it, try to arrange it in a way that takes up as little space as possible. There we go. And let's move these down here. We can duplicate this because if you look, these are the same shapes. So what I like to do is maybe I'll lay it out like this, but then I'll go ahead and duplicate it. I can also attempt to transfer this UV to that shape. And that's actually really easy. Once you do your layout, you simply shift select the like item, and this is the exact duplicate, and you're going to go to Mesh, Transfer Attributes, and we'll hit the option box, and you're going to select the word component. So by default, yours is probably going to say world. Hit component, and let's see if it works. There we go. And what happened was, look, they're now transferred. And I'm going to grab this, hold shift, and we'll do transfer attributes. It transfers them. And I'm going to kind of work my way down. And I can hit G on my keyboard. That actually will do the same thing. That will do the last command that you've done. Hit G again. Grab the original, hold shift, grab the other one, hit G. Grab the original, grab the other one, hit G. And what's happening is these are stacking on top of each other. And in this case, that's okay, because we're going to paint them the same exact material. And then finally G. So there's actually, when you look at these, you'll see what I'm kind of talking about here. There's a ton on them. So if I grab one and move it away, you're going to have a bunch of others here. So when you're all said and done, and we've just laid out everything here to my knowledge, we're going to do a edit, delete all by type history. And the fun part is now we're going to turn on our hammerhead, take a quick look at all our UVs, squares everywhere. That's a good sign. I don't think I missed any spots. You guys will probably let me know if I did. And I'm going to go to UV editor. Now check this out. We have all these different pieces. We want, though, to get all these different pieces that we've just made into this big square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out this UV. So when I grab them all together, it becomes actually pretty easy. The biggest things we see should be the biggest in the scene. So I'm going to make this at least half my pixels here. And I'm going to take up as little room as possible, or most room as possible as I can. This is the other element that I feel could be rather large, so I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to go to shell mode, and I'm going to rotate it. And it's like a Tetris game at this point. Literally, you're just trying to jam in everything possible that you can fit. That's great. Don't be afraid if these don't line up as good anymore. So I'm going to hold shift and grab those. Okay. Let's grab these because there's tons of those. So I'm going to grab those in UV mode or shell mode, and I'm going to scale them down. And I'm going to put those, get them a little bigger actually. They're pretty relevant. There we go. And let's play with this one. Again, just grabbing some of these. And I want to make sure that I've actually moved all of those up. So when I look at that, it actually, notice I didn't grab them all. So I'm going to undo real quick with these. I want to grab all of those pieces, so I'm going to get those last actually. So let's grab this and this. Let's grab these, and when I'm holding shift, that's all I'm doing, because shift will allow me to see, and pardon my mouse, it's acting like a jerk today. So those pieces are going to go and fit in here, and looks like I can rotate those, and they may fit perfectly in there. Look at that. Is that money or what? Right on the target. Perfect. And then these can go here. And I'm going to scale those down a little bit. And I just kind of keep them next to each other. Actually, I'll rotate these. These will be easier to fit. Go to shell. There we go. Got the end of the hammer and then the top of the hammer. So I'll probably end up having to move this guy right here. So I'm going to move him out of the way real quick. Let's grab everything. There we go. Let's see. He can fit right over here. Look at that right there. And we don't have many pieces left here. We have, this looks to be the end piece. So we're going to have to creatively sneak this one in. And I know that this is probably the more important piece, so I'm going to rotate it. And again, go into shell mode and try to, get these pieces in as tight as possible. These I can rotate down. Use my little rotate keys. Put those there. Good. This is looks like the bottom end of the hammer. That's going to be kind of an important end, so I'll give it its own little space over here. All right, last but not least, the tricky ones, these guys. So if we grab everything in there, I'm going to go to shell mode to do it. Grab them all. Make sure they're all highlighted. Looks like they are. We're going to stick those in. We're going to rotate those. And we're going to scale them. Oops, scale from the middle. And I'm going to hit W here. My computer's lagging just a bit. Let me grab just those two. Scale them down. That looks pretty good. These may just be a small brown leather, and then these now need to be moved somewhere else, but there's a spot right here that I can utilize. These can go right here. Actually, if I rotate those again, there we go. Now at this point, let's take a look. What we have is a UV layout, a proper UV layout. Everything has been mapped. You can see everything is in part of this. And if we hold shift, I haven't combined anything, have I? Not at all. I haven't done a thing that combined them. So the next step would be to grab everything, and I want you to really closely study this, and I want you to lay yours out as close as possible. Now, honestly, what I'm looking for is this big shape for the hammerhead, some straight shapes, and some shapes for the leather pieces, and the handle. If you give me something that looks totally different than this, you're not going to get the highest grade. But obviously, if like your little mountain peak here is going the other way, or it's not as crooked as mine, but it's still in proportion, you're okay. So once you're done, you're going to select everything, go to Polygons, UV Snapshot, and you're going to save a file, I'll put it on my desktop, called your last name, UV Layout. Hit save. Let's make it 2048 by 2048. We'll make it a JPEG. And that's it. So look at my settings, take them in, hit OK. Must be in object mode. Now these are still separated, but now you've just created a nice little coloring book page for you to go into Photoshop and you can color in your hammer. So hopefully this has helped you today. I would love to see this submitted. I want to see you guys submit that, as well as I want to see your UV layout in action. So go ahead and do kind of line up your hammer maybe, I don't know, like this, and do a quick screen grab, and then kind of put those two files together in Photoshop. And for sake of demonstration, what we can do is I'll show you how to do that real quick. I'll open both and give it a few seconds here to open up. Okay, great. So open your UV map, hit crop tool, and I want you to open up your crop tool a little bit here. You're going to actually make a crop the other way, and then the fun part, copy your image, paste it. My image is a little smaller than I'd like, but that's okay. Presentation to me is super important for you guys. That's how you're going to get a job. That's how people are going to notice you. There we go. So I like to crop everything, and there we go. That's a great layout. So check that layout out. It wasn't hard. I'm going to do a file, save as, and we'll make it a JPEG. Dombrowski. You're going to name it your last name, UV layout. Get the word copy out of there. Hit save, hit replace, hit OK. And when you submit your file to me, your file that you submit to Canvas will look like this. And again, there's going to be minor differences, I understand, but I want you to attempt to use all those techniques that I use to make this exact file. So I really look forward to seeing your UVs. Have patience. You may have to do this over and over again until you get it, but do the best that you can, and really, have some patience with it, and it will turn out well. Catch you guys next time.